it's well. Yeah, I mean, it takes a little bit of game. I can't help there.
Right.
If your shit's weak and lame, I can't do nothing. Right. I can help you with it, but I can't. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But, can I cook for you? Yeah. Take out the Mama Celeste, put it in for 2.5 minutes.
No, hell no.
Shotgun with Charlie.
Riding shotgun refers to the practice of sitting next to the driver in a moving vehicle. The term riding shotgun came around after the time of the stagecoach, when somebody used to sit next to the driver holding a shotgun, in case they ran into bandits. My name is Charlie Cook, and I drive a lot. I like to talk to people while I'm driving, so I interview people in my car while I'm driving. Welcome to Riding Shotgun with Charlie.
All right, before we start this episode of Riding Shotgun with Charlie, I want to say thank you to everyone for watching the show. If you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel, please do. If you're listening to the show in podcast, please keep listening to it there. You can find the show on YouTube, on Gunstreamer, on the OpsLens app. You can check out the articles in AmmoLand, and you can see that I'm repurposing shows on armedlifestylemagazine.com as well. So if you're here, you're watching the show, you enjoy it, please hit the like and share, or like and subscribe, and then share it with your people, because this is how we get the stagecoach across America. All right, welcome to this episode of Riding Shotgun with Charlie. Today we are in Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love, right?
And sisterly affection.
And sisterly affection.
I didn't make that up.
What didn't we have? First of all, we have Jose Morales with us. Jose. Can you see?
Charlie, it's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure, my pleasure. Yeah, so didn't Philly for a while go by the city that loves you back?
I have no idea. I'm not originally from Philly.
Okay.
But yeah, I guess so. Yeah, sounds about right.
In the late 90s, I came down here on a field trip for work, and they said the whatever.
I'm from New York, the city that never sleeps.
Oh, there we go.
We say it never sweeps, but...
I noticed that on the way down. Anyway, I want to thank Jose for the tasty cakes, because I think you can get these in Massachusetts.
You can, but yeah, you pay the Massachusetts tax, right? So.
Shocking. So I love this. Last time I came down, I grabbed some tasty cakes at the Wawa, and Jose had a whole box of butterscotch crimpets. So I'm gonna love these on the way back.
Enjoy them.
Thank you very much, man.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much for being on the show. Let's go. There's no traffic. Let's hit the road.
Sounds good.
All right.
Make a right up here.
Take a right up here. So tell us about yourself, man. You've got the Philly Firearms training. Philly Firearms
Academy?
Academy. That's
yes, make it more official.
Yeah. It sounds real. It sounds legit. How did you become a gun guy? How long have you been doing this?
Well, I've been actually teaching officially with a brick and mortar for about 12 years, but I've been actually teaching firearms since I got out of the Army in '91, but mostly then for friends and acquaintances that wanted to kind of go to the range, and they said, hey, I want to go shoot. We're gun guys. We love taking people to the range. Mm-hmm. And so I would say, yeah, absolutely. But you know what? You're going to have to sit with me and learn to load the gun and basic safety, because, just the basic stuff. And when I found out that the NRA offered certifications for what I was doing and I enjoyed doing, I went ahead and I went and I researched my pistol certification, mm-hmm. and it started from there. I told you the story about going to Western PA and such. So it's a hobby that kind of became a career.
That's great. All right, so did you grow up hunting or shooting? You said you grew up in New York, so probably not.
Not officially hunting, but there are a lot of two-legged animals in New York City. I grew up in the Bronx.
So what is this? Take a right. All right. So once you've hunted the two-legged creatures,
make a left. Another right.
All right.
Forgive me.
Once you hunt two-legged creatures, there's no game like hunting two-legged creatures.
Well, once you're hunted by two-legged creatures, I grew up there. So, interestingly enough, I grew up with a single mom, and somehow in New York City, she had a gun in the house, right? It didn't surprise me because she actually parented, so I knew I didn't touch it. But so guns were just not, taboo. So I knew don't touch it. It's for protection. And so it wasn't until later that I found out how draconian the gun laws were in New York.
Oh my gosh, totally.
Yeah. But we managed, and so we didn't have any accidents or any intruders, and it worked out right. It worked out well, rather.
That's cool. I didn't know. I grew up in the Midwest, an hour south of Chicago, and my father died when I was a kid, so it wasn't a thing.
Right.
But after I started to get into guns and become I wanted to become a firearm guy. My mom said to me, she's like, "Hey, you should come back to the Midwest and get your dad's guns." I'm like, "Were guns in the house?" I had no clue.
Wow.
And then I eventually do remember reaching underneath the my grandparents. Take a left. I reached underneath
the first right.
Okay. I remember reaching under the couch one time at my grandparents' house, and I remember like feeling a shotgun and pulling it out and be like, "Oh my God, it's a gun!" and pushing it back and never talking about it.
But they parented back then, right? So you could have them in the home, and you knew better because you were parented to actually start fiddling with them.
Yeah.
So and you're still here, so they did something right.
Something. Maybe not everything, but something. All right, so time in the military. What branch were you in?
I was in the Army.
Thank you.
Yep.
So I learned that it's good to say thank you for your service, but I think it's better to say welcome home. Have you heard this?
Not really. No.
Okay.
It's funny because I had a similar conversation with somebody in the airport when I went to the training to Texas about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. I saw the.
Let's face it. You can say where you went. You went to TACCON.
I didn't go to TACCON. I saw Tom Gibbons master instructor class.
Gotcha.
I missed TACCON this year, but hopefully not next year.
Gotcha.
But I was walking down the airport and I saw this young man in his uniform, and I just went by and I thanked him. I said, "Listen, thank you for your service." And it always ends up being that whenever you say that to a soldier or to a service member, they're almost always embarrassed because when you're in the military, you don't do it really for anything other than usually patriotism, right?
Right.
And so it's funny because he looked at me and he was like, thank you, and I went ahead and took that as a teachable moment to kind of explain to him, to share with him the best response I ever heard to thank you for your service, which was I went to an older veteran and I said, "Listen, thank you for your service." And he goes, "It was my honor." And I go, "Well, thank you for your service again."
That's cool.
Yeah. So I kind of counseled him because he seemed a little awkward. I said, "Listen, you know what?" And I shared with him that particular story.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, I've got a show coming out with Robin Bartlett, who's an author, and he's got a book. It's called Vietnam Combat.
Okay.
Firefights and history writing. And he said at the beginning of the book, because he's a Vietnam era, so when he came back, it wasn't so good. And he said what they liked hearing more than welcome back is, rather than thank you for your service, they like to hear welcome home because they took a lot of flack. Yes,
we're not welcome home.
So I'm trying to be like, all right, I want people to know that I'm cool. So what's the right phrase to say?
Yeah, no, and the thing is, all right. Oh, sorry about that, brother. That's all right. So just slow down so that right here is D'Alessandro's cheesesteaks, right across the street from Chubby's cheesesteaks, and they have this ongoing thing. D'Alessandro's is always voted kind of like the best. From what I hear, Chubby's has a really mean cheesesteak as well. So just a little insider, a pro tip, a Philly pro tip.
Pro tip when you're down here in Philly. Very cool. All right, so becoming an instructor, you said you went to central Pennsylvania to become an instructor because you didn't know, when you become a gun guy, you don't really, you have to get certified and probably to teach the NRA class, and I understand the NRA's got a lot of issues. They're trying to work them out, but when you're a non-gun person, you don't know about the USCCA, and you don't know about all these other pro-gun groups. So you look for NRA stuff.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So you became an NRA. You went to central Pennsylvania to become an NRA.
Yeah, like northwestern PA. I was good 12, 14 years ago, and I went ahead and went online and I searched for becoming an instructor, and I found a class. I was like 5 hours away.
Yeah.
So I went ahead and I booked it, and I got my hotel, and drove down there, and And it's really interesting because, I was like in the middle of like Pennsatucky, it's like just really rural Pennsylvania, right? And
So I heard Mike G say this. He says on one end, and he gave it to James Carville. On one side of Pennsylvania, you have Philly. On the other side, you have Pittsburgh, and the rest of it's Alabama.
Right. That's very apropos. Yeah, it really is kind of a whole other world.
Yeah.
More like akin to the Midwest than a big city.
Sure.
And I was a little anxious, of course, being 5 hours away and in an unusual environment. And I remember vividly walking into class, and everybody looks up, and they're all wearing camouflage, like
Sure.
Like hunting garb and stuff. And I'm like, okay, here we go. And you know what? They were the nicest, kindest, most welcoming, inclusive people I have ever met. And it was just such a positive experience that it just kind of ignited my passion for NRA training. And then later I found out that Anthony Colandro, our mutual friend and my mentor, just had training like 2 hours away from me. But
Right.
I think it happened for a reason. And,
Right.
it's one of these life experiences I enjoyed experiencing.
Yeah. What did you do before? Like from how long were you in the military, and what did you do before you became a gun instructor?
Yeah, I was 3 years in the military. Actually, I went into the military about at 19 and moved to Philadelphia to get out of New York City. And I had a godmother who lived here, and we visited here. And I said, "Wow, this is really great."
Mm-hmm.
It's like so low key and so mellow compared to New York City. And I was here for about a year, looking to get into college, and it didn't quite work out. And I said, you know what? The GI Bill, Army College Fund. Somehow I signed on the dotted line, and I ended up in Fort Dix for 3 years, but and close enough to Philly to actually visit my family. But
Right.
that's what caused me to resettle here. So I guess I'm an official Philadelphian, living here since like the early '90s, I guess.
I think that's long enough.
I'm not an Eagles fan, though. I mean, but in their defense, I'm not a football fan.
Right. I hear you. I've lived in Massachusetts long enough that my friends that I grew up with in the Midwest are like, "Oh my God, I thought you were from here." Sorry, I forgot you were. Yeah, I forgot.
You developed
were
the
from
accent?
here. Yeah, I don't think I have an accent.
You do not. You do
All
not. But I
right.
bet you can kick it in when you need
Oh
to.
my God, I can totally kick it
There
in.
you go.
Right? It's not that hard. Practice again, have it, yeah, kid.
I'm out of practice, but yeah,
It's,
it'll come back to you.
Yeah, I've tried my best to avoid it because it's disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway.
You don't want to be the stereotype, right?
Oh my
but,
God, I do not want to open my mouth and chowder comes out, right?
Chowder.
Open your mouth and chowder comes out, kid.
Yeah, so I got out of the Army. I came here, and I actually worked in the mental health and social service field as a drug and alcohol counselor and therapist at a methadone maintenance clinic for a number of years.
Wow.
So that's what makes me say to my students, I can feel your pain.
Right.
I got my undergraduate degree in the drug and alcohol counseling, and then I did that for a number of years, and I physically, just mentally and spiritually got burned out. I got burned out, and so it's really trying. It was during the huge AIDS kind of epidemic, and seeing patients and stuff and just die and waste away was really kind of trying. So, I ended up kind of segueing out of there into IT for a number of years, and web design and so on and so forth, and and then eventually kind of got into the gun thing full time, but starting out as a part-time instructor, just taking people to the range, sharing the love, and dispelling the stereotypes and myths, bringing people into the fold.
That's cool.
Yeah,
that is very cool. Very cool. So how long it taking people to the range? I love seeing it when the light goes off and people have a good time.
Have you ever met anybody that didn't have a good time?
No.
That's the thing. Even the most staunch anti-gun people, and I love getting people that are, especially ladies that are timid, having them just say, wow, that was awesome, that was amazing. If you just ease them into it and are supportive, you have a gun owner and a Second Amendment advocate for life, and someone to actually dispel the stereotypes. Say, you know what, you're not just all crazy, kind of weird looking camouflage wearing, tobacco chewing.
Right.
It's not. You're not the meme.
Absolutely. So. And even if they don't become gun owners and they pro-gun folks, at least they're more educated, and they, I don't want to say they can, they're more educated about it. They start to realize that the guns don't run around and shoot people, and they're not going to go off on their own. And
stuff that we take for granted that we get every day, but at least they can talk about and talk about firearms from a position of knowledge.
Yes.
And maybe challenge some of those stereotypes when their peers say, it's great crazy gun people, you know.
Right.
You know, at the very least, you know, foster dialogue, because that's really what it's all about, you know.
Absolutely. So how long did it go from you know, being part-time teaching friends to getting all the certifications? How many certifications do you have?
I really don't.
Can't count them anymore.
I don't keep. There's an old African proverb that says the drum that beats the loudest is the one most hollow. So I rarely talk about myself. But
Okay.
I'm certified in pretty much every discipline that the NRA certifies.
Wow.
People in as both an instructor and a training counselor.
Holy moly.
I'm a USCCA instructor as well.
Very
and
cool.
I've also done the Tom Gibbons Range Master instructor. Yeah, Range Master course, which I highly recommend.
Yeah, I was talking with someone about that just this past weekend. The TACCon opened up, and just this past weekend, TACCon closed down.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'd like to get in some classes with Tom Gibbons. I think that'd be amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I mentioned before, you know, learn from people's best practices and mistakes, you know, and so feel free to reach out, you know, make some recommendations, especially prepping for these courses. You know, it could be anxiety provoking.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Really anxiety provoking, you know?
Yeah.
But you know, the dirty little secret is, and it's funny, it gave me an idea for a video, for a class, for an Instagram video I'm planning on doing, is that, you know, don't forget that, you know, that all of your instructors, that's geared towards students, all of your instructors were just like you one day. Exactly like you. You know, anxious, maybe afraid or timid. You know, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Sometimes we as instructors forget that.
Yeah.
We do. What it's like to be at the other side of the desk, so to speak, you know?
So, Philly Firearms Academy, you said you have your own building?
Well, I had a brick and mortar. I had a couple of, I built my clientele bit by bit, you know, as you know,
Yeah.
it's kind of snowballs. And I got to the point where I needed a space, a dedicated space, because, you know, all those firearms instructors out there, I'm sure you can all relate. It can be a challenge getting a space. You have to navigate the egos of the gun store owners and the property owners and so on and so forth. So I was blessed to be able to get a space at a good price right across from the gun permits unit in Philadelphia, which was really challenging because I didn't get a lot of people knocking on my door asking for firearms instruction. They were looking for guns. 90% of people. I had to spend a lot of time just educating them on how important it is to actually know what the heck you're doing with a gun.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was incredible. But so I was blessed to have that for about 3 years. The gun permit unit kind of closed. I moved from a smaller location on the same block to a bit of a larger location, like 3 times the size. And then the gun permits unit closed down. Which caused me to actually look for another place. We moved to Willow Grove for about 2 years there.
Gotcha.
And then, you know, right before COVID hit, we ended up not renewing our lease. Just wasn't a good location. So, you know, all the trials and tribulations of, again, all those firearms instructors out there.
Right.
You know, we've all been there before, you know, learn from best practices. And the business of teaching firearms is not just all glory, you know. It's a lot of work.
What's the old saying? How do you make $1 million in the gun instructing business?
You don't.
You take $2 million.
Right. You know.
Oh my gosh.
Right.
So you had your own space. So it was just like it wasn't a range. It was an office.
It wasn't a range, but I was fortunate enough that it was the old, if anybody knows in Philadelphia, the old Colosimo's gun store.
Okay.
Old man Colosimo was an interesting figure here in Philadelphia, and he was one of the first gun stores here in Philly that catered specifically to the police during the Rizzo years. And so he actually ended up buying most of the block and having a range right around the corner. So it was an ideal kind of location.
That's
because
great.
I had a range literally
Right.
around the corner.
Totally.
So I would teach my students in my space.
Right.
And then just walk
Go
around.
for lunch and then meet at the range around
Exactly.
back?
Yep.
That's awesome.
Exactly. So it worked out really, really well.
That's very cool. So we were talking about this. The ranges in Massachusetts, most of them are sportsmen's clubs. And you have to be a member to go there to participate. So when I talk to people from other parts of the country that are like, oh yeah, you go to the range, you pay the range fee. I'm like, what's a range fee?
Yeah.
We have a membership fee.
We call it tribute. You bring the envelope of tribute to the range owner. All the instructors that deal with ranges, you get it.
Right.
I'm sure you get it.
Sure. Because were there a lot of places, or are there a lot of places that won't let you come in? Or do you have to, like, how does it work? If you wanted to go to one place and and teach a class, or let's say somebody's in another part of the state and they've heard about your reputation and they want to do some live fire, but they want to do it at a range near them.
It's really, Charlie, hit or miss. It's really hit or miss as an instructor, finding a range that would work with you. Like I mentioned before, here, instructorship tends to be really, really, really territorial, and people carve out their spaces. And I would never really understood that dynamic because, I've always found more success in collaborating with instructors and saying, Charlie's a great guy. I vetted him. I would send my wife to him because I can't know everything. I don't know everything.
Sure.
And I realize I don't know everything. So, that actually is a better approach, but it doesn't seem to be that way in a lot of places to the point where sometimes they'll just shun you and say, no, you can't teach out of here, which is particularly kind of disheartening for those new instructors that really want to start teaching people, and they approach these gun range owners and stuff, and again, they're like, no, you can't teach her, or they may want an absorbent fee. I've had situations where the instructor says, oh, how much you charge? Back in the day, I would charge, let's say, $100, $100 per student or something. So, well, I want half. And so, I've had conversations. Yeah, I want half. And I said to which I would respond with all due respect. When you get the training and you go ahead and get the seats and you go ahead and do the marketing, you go ahead and do half the work, you'll be split. I'll split half of the profits with you. But I can't do that because what ends up paying is really the students. So, again, not all gun store and range owners are like that. No, but I've just run into some interesting scenarios.
Yeah, it's
a challenge.
It is a challenge.
Because all you want to do is teach people.
Yeah, it is. When I moved to where I live now, I don't think I was an instructor when I moved to the town I live in now, but I did find the big sportsman's club in town, and I reached out to them. And I said, hey, I'm thinking of becoming a member. I'm a gun instructor. I'd like to bring students in. And they're like, oh, yeah, you can't bring in guests. I'm like, well, no, I want to teach these people how to do classes. They're like, we already have an instructor.
There you go.
I'm like, I don't want to teach classes for you guys. I'm kind of doing them for me.
Right.
And they're like, yeah, we don't want people making money off the range.
No, yes. Yep. That's like the script. That's like a script.
Yeah.
It's like
it is.
It's like a telemarketing script. They go down a tree.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I finally said to them, I'm like, so let me see if I get this straight. You don't want to bring guests into your range.
Right.
You don't want more people to shoot.
God forbid to get exposure. Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Because then what's going to happen is you're essentially cutting off your nose to spite your face. Because you're like, you don't want more people to shoot. You don't want new people to shoot. You don't want to bring them into your range. And I've never joined there. I've been in the town I've lived in for 15 years, and I've never joined. And somebody a couple months ago, someone's like, "Are you going to do a class at this sportsman's club?" I'm like, "Nope." They wouldn't let me bring in students, so I said, "Forget it."
And that's a shame because otherwise it could probably be a great space, a great area, a great place to take your students. But
absolutely,
some of them cut their noses to spite their faces, and a lot of times it's a bit of an old boys club,
Oh my gosh.
You hear about that? No rapid fire. You can't shoot more than one round a second is rapid fire. No more than 3 rounds in the magazine.
Right. So this is interesting. The club that I belong to, one of the clubs, just in the last 4 or 5 years, they built a whole new range. Like they tore down the old building. In the bathroom, there were cracks in the cinder block walls in the bathroom, so it was cold. Like the pipe, they were always concerned about the pipes freezing in the winter. They tore. I think they had to tear everything down except for one wall so that it could not be a new build. Right?
Oh, okay.
It was one of those kind of building and code things. So they built this amazing new indoor range.
Swing back, head toward back. Or
whatever we can.
Yep. Here, so let's get into the right lane.
All right. So they would they built a new indoor range. They built a classroom on the second floor. It's a really nice place.
Huh?
And then I was at a meeting recently, and they were talking about they don't want to have any quick draw in the indoor range.
Quick draw.
And I'm like, quick draw.
Slow draw, maybe.
Quick draw to me is right.
Right.
You're shooting a single action
slapping leathers
from the hip.
The leather slap. Yeah.
Yes. And I'm like, that's not what people do, because people want to practice drawing from concealment and shooting a gun. That's okay. That's not quick draw. That's just
Right. Well, Tom Gibbons said something really interesting. I mean, in the firearms field, things go in about 15-year cycles. you know, training kind of matures and kind of morphs and what have you. And, you know, as an instructor, if you're behind the curve, you don't keep up to date with it, you know, and some people are just behind the curve in a lot of areas, you know, myself included. You know, it's really easy to become outdated and be that guy that says, no quick draw.
Okay, what's quick draw?
Well, how do you tell that, you know, how do you train that young lady, right, who, you know, has been told by her husband, I'm going to get out of jail and I'm going to shoot you and I'm going to shoot the kids.
Yes.
How to properly draw from concealment. You know, the time to learn is not when she's groping in her purse, you know, hoping to find a gun, right? And so, you know, there has to be a kind of happy medium between, you know, responsible training and being able to provide the skills in a realistic environment.
Yeah,
in
absolutely.
In a realistic manner to our students, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's tough. Have you ever had, there's only been a couple times for me. So in Massachusetts, everyone's got to take a class in order to get their license.
Okay. Yeah,
so I
really admire that. Yeah.
Yes, but
there's always a verso, right? There's always, but I'm from the Masad Ayub school of, you know, the Second Amendment is the Second Amendment, fantastic. But you know what? I see too many idiots out there, so I don't honestly think that the Second Amendment applies for you carrying a loaded gun with absolutely no competency next to me and my family. That's just me, and it may ruffle feathers, but that's my personal. It's because there are too many idiots out there. I see them every day.
This is true.
They walk into my shop limping. Someone called me today. See, the thing is here in Philly, it's really interesting. Everyone pretty much wants remedial education, not preventative education, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, right lane. Okay. So, not preventative education. So, I'll get calls, and whenever I hear a call,
hold on, this slipped by. Remedial education, not preventative.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. They want after the fact.
Right, after the fact.
After they come in limping. Right.
I hurt myself. Can you show me how to do this?
Right. Or you know what? When someone usually contacts me and they say, do you offer the NRA basic pistol course or its equivalent? I immediately know that they lost their license to carry. Because Philadelphia has a weird kind of process where if you get your license stolen from your home or your vehicle, or you otherwise commit some kind of infraction, you know, they lose your gun, leave your gun on top. I've had people leave their guns on top of the porta potty at their son's soccer game, in the gym, you know, anything. If you get your gun stolen from your home or your car, so on and so forth, or you brandish the gun, quote unquote, you're going to get your license suspended immediately, and you're going to have to be, you're going to have to take an approved course in order to get your license back.
An NRA basic pistol course or something equivalent.
Or it's equivalent. And there's no other real equivalent really other than the NRA basic pistol course.
Right.
And maybe the USCCA course, but that's more of a label as a concealed carry course. But be that as it may, so I just had somebody there, you know, call me today, send me an email. And I said, yep, NRA basic. Do you offer it? He left me a message. I'm like, because in order to obtain my license.
Gotcha.
So that's a shame.
It is. So I've come around. I don't know. I guess I'm ADD. I'm all over the place. I don't think you should need.
It's a squirrel.
Oh, jeez, it is.
There you go.
Look, it's a fire truck. SOS, shiny red object, right? I don't think you should have training, but I think it's a good idea. I don't want the government coming down and saying these are the requirements you need to do.
I get it. Yeah. I know, brother. I totally get it.
Yep.
I totally get it. I mean to cut you off.
No,
I
that's
get
fine.
it, and that's something that I struggle as an instructor, and a Second Amendment advocate. Right? I don't want any political party, any governmental agency to create the standards and make them so unattainable and so expensive that the average person can't.
It gets priced out.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
But what's the median? You know, what's a happy medium? And it's difficult to find that medium.
It definitely
but
is.
hopefully, you know, but thankfully, you know, you and I will listen and have that dialogue, right? Some people won't. Like, no way. Second Amendment all the way. No way. Right. And it really is, we need an answer, I think, for to encourage people to get training. We need to, because especially if you're going to be carrying a gun, a loaded gun, because it's not something that is a simple thing to do and to manipulate under stress. I mean, like I said, you get it. But
yeah, there's I forgot what I was going to say, and then I remembered, and then I forgot.
I'm sorry, I cut you off.
That's all right.
But Second Amendment, not government agencies.
Yes. I don't know.
It'll come back to you.
It will.
Yep. It's boomeranging.
It will come back. I don't want the government telling me. I got to keep working through this. You keep talking.
No. I get it. And again, like I told you, I struggle with that all of the time. But I've had dialogues with one of the things that I'm doing, I mentioned to you, is my wife is an ER doc. Mm-hmm. And an administrator, probably one of the busiest, the Knife and Gun Club of Philadelphia. She sees a lot of gunshot victims and stuff, and she's an educator, curriculum developer, much smarter than me, and so I'm kind of blessed in that respect. And so, she sees a lot of tragedy as well, and you need to be able to have these dialogues with the people either on the fence or the anti-gunners or rabid anti-gunners, and talk about these things, right? Which is something that I don't think a lot of us are inclined to do organically. And I think that just helps the dialogue all the way around.
So since she sees knives and gun wounds, a lot of people say, well, I'm anti-gun because I see all the effects of what happens to gun violence. It hasn't changed her?
Well, it definitely affects her, and just like you. That term gun violence drives me crazy.
Yep.
But you know what? But this is the challenge this is the challenge that I place to Second Amendment advocates. And I love you guys, right? Let's come up with an alternate term and then push that term, because as long as we let them use that term, it's going to continue to be used.
I don't know if you know Dan Was.
No, I don't.
Dan Was wrote a book called Good Gun, Bad Guy. And he's got 3 different books out. I've had him on. I'm good friends with him.
Wow.
He just calls it human violence.
Exactly.
Cases like the guns don't commit violence. It's human violence.
Yes.
And what's not good is when we use those terms and we put some validity to it. So I don't know if you notice this, when I said gun violence, I do this weird thing with my voice because I can't take it seriously. You know what I mean? I do the same thing with assault weapons. I use air quotes and funny voices when I talk about that kind of stuff.
Sure.
But so she sees the effect of this, and
she sees it all of the time, and it's been a challenge. I mean, I've known her since before medical school. So, and I said to her, "Listen, honey, I love you, but guns come with the package, right? So I'm not going to change,
right?
I'm very staunch when it comes to that, and so." But I said, you know what? What I'd like for you to do is, I'm never going to force you to go to the range, but I want you to learn how to load and load clear, handle the gun properly, just in case, God forbid, you ever need it. And you know what she said? She said, that's fair. And we trained a little bit. We took her to shoot a little bit, and that kind of nurtured, that planted the seed, and it germinated over time by me not pressuring her. So she's a read safety officer. She's helped me with classes. She's indispensable in keeping me on track. Again, and it's a struggle for her seeing a lot of trauma, and the medical field being as liberal and anti-gun as it is. But I remember doing a training there, and that was just another really eye-opening experience in terms of being kind of judged for being and having NRA associated with your credentials.
Yeah, sometimes it works against you.
Oh yeah, especially when you're trying to build bridges, right? Because people's posture immediately. I'll tell you the story. Want to hear the story?
We got time.
I'll tell you the story. Yeah, my wife is actually sitting at an administrative meeting where she works, and someone said the gun violence topic came up, and the chair of the pediatrics department said to her and said, "Hey, you're into guns. You do guns, right?" And she goes, "Yeah." She and my husband's a firearms instructor, and so she goes, "Yeah, well, we'd love to have a safety kind of training for our residents and our attendings." And I said, "Well, I'll talk to my husband and see." And so I said, "Sure, absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
We get a chance to have a conversation and talk about this.
Absolutely." So I went ahead and did my due diligence. I got all my materials together, what have you. I got some Eddie Eagle gun safe stuff. I contacted my people at the NRA headquarters. They sent me boxes of NRA Eddie Eagle materials and pamphlets and flyers, because that's how we roll in the education department. And imagine their surprises. I was getting set up, and they were coming on in. As soon as they saw the NRA Eddie Eagle, the NRA, the 3 letters of doom, their postures immediately closed. And so it took me about a good 10 minutes to kind of warm them up and make them realize that we're just human beings that want to help people. But the one thing that sticks to my mind from that training, well, 2 things. Number 1 is I passed a training gun, because I couldn't really take a live gun, because God forbid you take a real gun with no ammunition to a hospital.
Right.
So I went ahead and we used some training guns and a toy gun. And so I said to a couple of people in there, I said, the chair of the department and someone else, I want you to observe everyone as I pass this along, and I want everybody to pass it. I want you to observe two things. Note for how many people put their fingers on their triggers, and I want you to note how many people point the gun at other people, unbeknownst to them. And then we're going to mention that in class. Yeah. So the toy gun goes all around and comes back to the front, and right before it gets to me, one of the attendings turns to the other attending, points the toy gun, pulls the trigger, and shoots him in the head. My wife looked at me, I looked at my wife. She saw the top of my head explode, spin around, and come back down again. And that's kind of like what I kicked the training with. You know, all guns, you know, are to be treated as if they're actually loaded. And so now, you know, and higher education doesn't make you necessarily any more gun wise than so. It was a real eye-opening experience to see that level of ignorance and carelessness from really highly educated people. Right. And the second part that really kind of was eye-opening is that the day after, because the news was there, the day after, my wife was it's great. Yeah, channel I believe 6 was there. So but the next day, my wife got called to her boss's office, and she said, her boss said to her, "Listen, I heard that the NRA was on campus today." And she goes, "Well, no, the NRA wasn't, but my husband is a certified instructor, and that's one of his certifications, among others." And so, you know, but it's interesting how, you know, that game where you whisper a fact to one person and 20 people later the narrative has changed.
The old telephone game.
Yeah, the old telephone game. You know, that all they took away from that was that the NRA big scary, you know, though that organization who shall not be named was on campus, and despite all the hard work that we do to kind of to prevent tragedy, you know, so
right, which kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier. The we need the NRA, and we need a strong NRA, because they do take a lot of the arrows, because the anti-gun folks don't know about Second Amendment Foundation, Gun Owners of America, and Firearm Policy Coalition. Like, they don't know these other groups are doing all this other work. You know, they don't know they're doing the behind the scenes things. And the NRA started off as an educational group, right?
Yeah, sporting organization to get I believe it was Civil War,
after the Civil War,
Civil War soldiers give an outlet for their riflemanship skills.
Yeah,
in New York of all places. Yeah,
shocking. Shocking. Back to the whole education thing. Education's a good thing. I'm sure you know the story of Shanine Allen.
Oh, I know Shanine Allen quite well.
Yes, I had her on the show a bunch of years ago, and she said she went down to the Philly police station to get a gun license, and they barely gave her any education at all.
Well, let me tell you, my first gun lesson was actually getting my license to conceal carry here in Philadelphia. That's what sparked my interest, and it left a really sour taste in my mouth. I got my license to carry probably around the early 90s. And I really got it because my wife's cousin was a security guard, and he said, "Hey, you want to go and get your license to carry?" And I said, "Not really. You know, no." But I started thinking, you know, I travel with the gun a lot, so maybe it might be a good idea to kind of stop by a police officer. So I said, "Yeah, sure, why not?" Yeah. And I remember to this day very vividly being called in to pick up my license, and the lady said, "Here you go, next." And I go, "Whoa, wait a second, before you kick me out, do I get a book?" "No, next." I go, whoa, before you kick, these are all police officers. And I love my police officers, but the Philadelphia Gun Permits Department is an interesting entity. And so I said, "Listen, before you kick me out," I said, where would I go to get training? And they go, "Look at the phone book." And I go, "Next." I go, "Okay, no problem." And I said, "Give me this license, and I have no idea what to do with it, and carry a gun." And so I said to myself, you know, I always kept that in the back of my mind. It left a huge impression in my mind, you know, so I can imagine that. But they did give me a letter that said, and it's called the upon receipt letter, with all of the things. I call it the scary letter, of all of the things that can happen to you in the event you actually, and all the things that can happen to you if you don't follow the gun laws. But, you know, they hold us to standards that they don't provide.
It's nuts, isn't it? The first class I took to get a gun license, we have a certain number of approved classes that the state accepts, and the town that I lived in, the only class the chief accepted was the class that he taught. Okay. So we had to go to his class. It was 4 hours long, 3.5 hours of a bunch of legal mumbo jumbo.
Okay.
They held up a revolver and a semi-auto. They said, "Here's a revolver, here's a semi-auto. Don't pick them up. Don't shoot anybody." And I swear to God, I went out knowing less than I went in knowing.
Isn't that crazy?
It's completely nuts. And most of the discussion at this class happened around a recent shooting. One of the local car lot owners, one of the car dealer owners, went away for vacation, came home early. His neighbors knew he was going away. Saw someone in the house. The neighbor saw someone in the house. The neighbor called the police. The police went into the house, started looking around. Guy didn't know who it was. Boom, shot the cop.
There you go. Yeah.
So
Mike will tell you a bunch of stories too. Mike Giramito will tell you a bunch of stories similar to that. I think in, what was it, Kansas City, Missouri, yesterday or the day before, earlier this week, an older gentleman shot a young black male that knocked on the door. From what the report says, because, of course, you don't really know what the hell's happening until 3 days after. Right. And take all the news stories and the intersection of all that plus logic and fact is the truth. Yeah. But supposedly he was knocking on the door, mistaken place, and the gentleman shot through the door and hit him in the head. Wow. And then shot him again when he was on the ground. Now, I don't know how true this is. Right. But it's one of these things where these stories are not uncommon. And if I had $1 for everyone that says, if I pull out a gun, I'm going to use it. Whoa, wait a second. Yeah. No, that's the wrong attitude, right? But let me teach you. Let me teach you the right process, legally, and the right attitude to have. Absolutely.
Getting an education when you have a firearm, particularly if you're going to carry it, or you think you could possibly use it for self-defense, it takes so much training and education. And there's plenty of people that are like, well, I got a friend that's a cop, and he said if somebody runs out of my house, they're stealing my TV, I shoot them and drag the body.
Because I've been around guns all my life.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yes, that too.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I always tell people, I'm like, look, I never watched CSI, but I think shooting someone outside your house and dragging them in your house, that's tampering with evidence. So I don't know if I would do that.
Yeah, it is really kind of a challenge, and I'm sure like all the firearms instructors and Second Amendment advocates, and all you people out there that have taken people shooting can relate to that as well. That attitude of complacency. I've been around guns, it's so pervasive, and it's just really saddening. And one of the challenges for me is to break through that wall, and because I don't want that, that wall to be broken down by, them being carted off to jail because they did something,
something they didn't know.
They didn't know, how to avoid,
I remember Shanine told me that she didn't know that her Pennsylvania permit didn't work in Jersey.
She didn't. Well, it's funny because Shanine, who is a sweetheart. Shanine she's come to a couple of events I told you about with Mosh as well. And and it's funny because she and I were speaking one day. She said, I remember parking.
This must be the old part of town because we're on like a rock road.
The cobblestone. These are actually they're called. They don't call them cobblestones. They were used originally as ballast. In most of the places.
So I apologize for the audio that you just heard.
No worries. Yeah, this is the Chestnut Hill section of Philadelphia.
All right, so she needs to come to some events.
So she's come to some events. I remember she came to my shop when I was in Spring Garden at the Colissimo space, and she said to me, I remember sitting outside your shop and noticing it was a gun, a firearms academy rather. And but I just I didn't know, and she didn't connect. It didn't just dawn on her, and that was before the tragedy. Wow. And I was like, wow, I really wish I was outside that day and say, hey, come on in,
right?
But it's one of these things where we all have our own paths, man.
Yeah, we really do. We really do.
But yeah, it's, again, I'm a big advocate of kind of having those dialogues too, because you have to have those dialogues.
You do.
And you have to have those dialogues with the anti-gunners and people that are outside of your comfort zone, which is a challenge. I find it kind of really challenging, but because my wife's in the medical field and, they've asked her about gun stuff because she's the gun nut, right? Because she has a husband who's a gun and firearms instructor. I found myself, kind of like taking a leap of faith and kind of having conversations with the Giffords group, having conversations with Ceasefire PA, going on their kind of group meetings and stuff. And you still meet that resistance, but it's really important to show your face. And as a Second Amendment advocate in these, not necessarily Second Amendment inclusive spaces, and show them you're just a regular human being whose heart pumps blood and not some viscous black fluid.
Yeah. It's what they have going on in Massachusetts is they've been doing these listening tours, gun law listening tours.
Okay.
And then they get all these people that are anti-gun folks or non-gun folks, and they tell us all the things that we should be doing as gun owners.
Which is frustrating, isn't it?
It is. I went to one of them. It was guns and domestic violence. And there were some gals from the DC Project that were there to talk. And it's the non-truths that were coming out of these people's mouths.
It's cringeworthy, and you're like, really? No. And people believe it.
Yes.
Speaking of my mother-in-law the other day, she had asked me about, because she watches MSNBC and CNN. Yeah, I know. But listen, she's lived through the civil rights movement, so she has a right to be as liberal as she wants to be, and I respect that because she lived through the riots and such, and I get it. She approached me and said, "So about this rifle, this AR," and we had a nice conversation. I explained to her, I demystified a couple of things. I printed her an article. He was, "Well, I didn't know this, and I didn't know this, and I didn't know this." It was, "Well, now you know, and you can let other people know."
Yeah.
But it's having these kind of dialogues that are really important. But I think it takes work on both sides. I struggle with it because I don't want to. Part of us, I don't want to deal with the stupidity. Okay, the stuff that's going to come out of these people's mouths, I don't want to deal with.
Yeah.
But I put that in my back pocket because I can maybe serve as the voice of reason and just to demystify and maybe clarify a couple of points.
Yeah.
But I've run into stuff like that when I've done some of these Zoom calls with these anti-gun groups. I told you we started an organization called Gunwise USA that focuses on educating clinicians, social service professionals, and individuals that are charged with counseling and training on firearms in spaces that are traditionally anti-gun. And so we're not partisan, we're not biased. We're just going to give you the facts and explain to you and answer questions and kind of promote, clarify just misconceptions about firearms and teach you firearm safety and gun handling. Similar to what we did, at the hospital with my wife. And it's gone really, really well. But it's a challenge because, again, you find a lot of those anti-gunners and individuals with that mindset of all guns are evil, and by extension, all gun owners are evil.
Right. Yeah, we're like guilty by association.
Right.
Yeah, it's a bunch of bunk, for sure.
Sure. So when they go low, we go high. How does that work?
Oh, yeah, right. Right. Michelle Obama, right?
When they go, but you have to see that's the thing. We have to use the same tactics.
Oh my God, absolutely.
We have to use the same tactics, and one of the things that we forget about things and let things go in the back burner. But there, a lot of times people are anti-gun just are incessant with bringing back the rhetoric, right? But we just kind of put it in our back pocket. We forget, we forgive, and we move on. Sometimes it's worth, just kind of keeping that fire going to a certain degree, not to be oppositional,
right?
But just to keep that fire going so that our message, continues to resonate and it's consistent.
Absolutely.
At least that's my opinion.
Perfect.
Yep. So more cobblestones. Yeah, more cobblestones.
I know. We're all over the place, man. All right. Well, listen, we are almost back to where we need to be. Let's wrap things up. How can people find you? How can they find the Philly Firearm Academy?
Yeah, if you're ever in Philly, you just want to kind of visit us. We're at phillyguntraining.com and on Instagram at phillyguntraining. And come on down. Cheese sticks are on me.
Woo-hoo. Now you're talking.
There you go.
Listen, Jose, thank you so much for being on.
Charlie, thank you. It was my honor.
I'm going to be remiss if I don't say that we met last summer at Rick Ector's event.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Out in Detroit. And there's something going on in Jersey that weekend as well this year.
Is there? I didn't hear that.
That's okay. We'll have to. We'll chat.
We'll talk off camera.
We'll talk. Anyway, we want to thank you guys for tuning into the show. If you have not subscribed to Riding Shotgun with Charlie, please do. If you are not a member of the Second Amendment Foundation, you can join them with a $150 lifetime membership to the Second Amendment Foundation.
That's cheap.
That's wow. $150.
Can't have a meal for $150 for two people.
I'm going to send you a link and then I get credit.
Nice. Let's do it.
All right.
Make it happen. Yeah.
You can check out all of your Pro Freedom podcasts at sdrn.us. That's the Self-Defense Radio Network. We're going to put a bunch of links for Jose and the Philly
Firearms Academy.
Philly Firearms Academy. What was the other one you just said?
Philly Gun Training?
Philly Gun Training, yeah. Did you got to be the same?
Philly Firearms Academy is too long. Yeah, it's Philadelphians, right? So we got to keep it, stay focused. Keep it simple.
Right. When I came up with the idea for my show, I'm like, Riding Shotgun with Charlie. And they're like, that's too long. I'm like, what am I don't know how to cut it down.
That's what people say to me. You know what? You're in Center City. I can't drive 20 minutes. That's a long. I drove 5 hours from my instructorship. You can't drive 20 minutes?
I have friends. I have friends like, dude, you should come over. It's not, if you're going here, it's not that far. I'm like, dude, it's the same distance from my house as it is to yours.
Right, exactly.
It's ridiculous.
You can't fix lazy, I guess.
Anyway, thank you guys for tuning in. We will talk to you soon. Thanks a lot, dude. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, brother.